Well, Paul Martz and Linda Ditchkus, welcome back to the Rocky Mountain Rider podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Thanks, Mark. Psyched.
Co-editors of the brand new, just getting warmed up for the presses Rocky Mountain Fiction Writer Anthology 2024 edition. And we are going to jump right to the news. We have a title and a cover reveal. So let's I'll put in a little drum roll here. And away we go. Who wants to announce?
See, so the title is Without Breaks, Fingers Crossed. And do we have the cover to screen share?
I will pop that right into the video right here. So don't worry about that. We'll take care of that.
Great.
Yep. That's great. So the title, tell us about the development of the title. We'll get to the stories and who got selected in a second, but that is a very, I must say, catchy title. How did that get developed? Who came up with it?
So yeah, let me talk about the title a little bit. The theme, of course, was Colorado's changing climate. And that's got a nice alliteration and a nice rhythm, and it's kind of catchy. But we really wanted something that would cause a prospective buyer to pick up the book and explore it a little bit further. And as we read the stories that we had selected, we saw that there was a common thread in all of them. The protagonists all find themselves in unforeseen situations. They need to make quick decisions. Sometimes they don't have the resources to do that. They depend on friends or family or their own instincts or find resources within themselves that they didn't know existed. And then they move forward into a new reality, for better or for worse. So we thought, Without Breaks, Fingers Crossed would be kind of a title that would get a prospective buyer to, I wonder what that's about, and then pick up the cover and take a look at it and see maybe a little bit of incongruity, because it's certainly not about driving, right, after you see that cover. And then maybe that would engage them enough to read the back cover text. And at that point, I think we've got the buyer hooked.
That's great. Linda, anything else to add to that title development story?
No, I think Paul's about covered it. Yeah. Actually, he probably minimized how long we stewed over the title. And we wrote summaries of each of the stories, and it went back and forth, and we came up with some absurd ideas, and we came up with some funny ideas. And finally, when we got to this title, we both just said, oh yeah, this is the one. So
Nice. And how about the cover image? Can you before we get to the story list announcement, let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. And I'll kind of talk about that a bit. So let me talk a little bit about the process that we did for the cover, because other authors that are thinking about publishing might be interested in that. We used a company called 99 Designs, and you can find them at 99designs.com. Are you familiar with them at all, Mark, or have you used them in the past?
I'm familiar with them. I haven't used them.
Okay, and I've used them for a couple of other projects before. And so what we did with that is, it's kind of a cool idea. You really end up with artists from all over the globe that are looking at your project and submitting proposals for you. But what you do is, first you pay 99 Designs upfront and usually guarantee that whoever the winning artist will get that money. So that really promotes a lot of artists to address your proposal. And so you end up with, I think they suggest that depending on the amount that you agree to pay, you'll probably get about 30 responses to your proposal that you put out there. And it's pretty detailed. It talks about what the requirements are, kind of what the book is about, maybe what some of the stories are about, those sorts of things. And we posted that online once we paid 99 Designs. And we ended up with 70 proposals, 70
Wow.
proposals, which I think is a lot. So I think we're pretty interested in our project. And maybe kind of the expansive notoriety that it would gain as well. But then what you do is, once you get these 70 proposals in, you have a couple of days to look at them, communicate with either the artists individually or even as a group if they're really not getting what you want. And then they improve their proposals over the next couple of days. And then once that period ends, 4 days, it ends, and then you have 2 or 3 days then to decide, narrowing the field down to like 6 that you like the best. And then you get another 4 days with those 6 finalists. And then at the end, then you have to pick 1 out of the finalists. And then they also have a great feature that you can send links to these proposals or to these artists, what they've sent in to friends and family or other people that are other authors or whatever, and they can give you feedback as well. So it's not just, us that are trying to figure out which one to pick. And Paul may want to talk about a little bit about how he also reviewed that cover and participated in that as well. Paul, can I turn that over to you for a second?
Sure. So because of my lack of eyesight, I had a sighted person helping me out with looking at the different covers and describing them to me. So I kind of felt like, well, obviously you, Linda, you need to make the final decision on this, but I had a feel for what the covers were showing and what they were illustrating. And I had my own feelings for which ones were my favorite and which ones, not so much. So
Yeah.
I think we came up with a great design. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that input for us as a team was really important too, to make sure that we both had input into that part of the process. But what we ended up with is the cover that Mark has already shown to the group. And what that is we wanted to make sure that there was a Rocky Mountains element to it, which I think is vividly shown in the cover. In addition, what we have is a mountain climber who is propelling himself down a rope into this hole, which we perceive as the future, the unknown, the abyss. Who knows what's down there? It could be scary, it could be good things, it could be bad things. And certainly with the changing climate aspect, whether that's political or whether that's, what's going on with the environment, all of those potentially troubling things are down there. And we've got this climber who is going down the rope. And we believe it's even scarier because for anybody who is a rock climber, you know that what you do when you set up a rope is put a knot at the end of the rope. So if you're going down to the bottom, you don't forget where the end is, or if you're running into trouble, you've got a knot that's going to give you a safety. And there's no knot at the end of this rope. And this is going to go into the hole no matter what, without brakes, fingers crossed. And so that's really where this cover came alive for us.
Very cool. Terrific. Just a small detail in there I'm curious about, if you can share, what did the cover cost you using that process for those who might be interested?
Yeah, it was about a little over $400.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty reasonable, but yeah.
And don't we actually set that amount in the contest?
Yeah, we have to submit the $400 to 99 Designs, and they hold it like in an escrow, knowing that they will be giving it, and we can't get it back. Now you can set up the custom or the contest where you do get it back, where you have the right to say, I don't like any of these, but I think you would get fewer artists that are willing to contribute to that if that's, a barrier that you put on that. And one of the things we did want to mention as well is that one of the really high quality submissions that we had, and certainly in the finalists, was an artist that ended up using some AI to colorize part of the cover. And because of the Rocky Mountain fiction writers' recent policy about avoiding AI, any kind of content, we decided that we needed to disqualify that particular one. Even though we did put no AI generated artwork in the proposal, the artist did let us know that there was an AI element, and so we did not include him as a final contender because of that.
Well, given that, care to announce the name of the person who did the final cover and where she is from?
Yeah, the name of that particular artist is named Pulp, P-U-L-P, and he has a company that's called, Pulp Art Studio. And I think if you Google Pulp Art Studio, you can find him, or certainly if you're using 99 Designs, you can find him in their list of artists. I think they have hundreds of other artists as well, but that's who ended up doing the cover art for us.
Yeah, great. All right, let's get to the list of stories that were selected. And I just want to cue readers, listeners in. There is going to be a name in this list that might be a big surprise. So I'm just going to create a little, tension here, a little curiosity about what the heck Mark is talking about. But anyway, drum roll again.
With 13 stories. Where the River Ends by J. Warren Weaver. Beyond Carbon by Rachel Delaney Kraft. The Tamarisk Hunter by Paulo Bacigalupi. Our Sprinkler System by Leslie L. Smith. Right Sizing by Jeff Yoskett. Attack of the Third Planet by Colin Irish. IFAS by Laurel McCarg. Visited by a Crane by Richard Ginsburg. Sticka by Natasha Watts. The Cistern by our very own Mark Stevens. Stokes the Happy by Sepa Onion. We'll Always Have Peaches by Ryan Glenn. And the final story is A Blip in Time by Pat Stolte.
Well, I'm just going to say those titles are something else. Those are terrific. Wow. Yeah. Okay. The one that jumped out at me was Paulo, and you did a better job pronouncing his last name than I would ever do. So I'll let you take another run at it, but very, very well-known writer for sure.
Paulo Bacigalupi, yeah, and I'll let Linda explain how that came about.
Well, again, it was kind of a team effort. We were talking about the anthology and just kind of exploring, how can we make this a little different than some of the other ones, which have all been fantastic, so nothing taking back, but just kind of make it a little bit different from us. And one of the things that came up is, in addition to the incredible stories that we've gotten from the Rocky Mountain fiction writers through our normal process, who are marvelous, marvelous stories, we thought, wouldn't it be fun to have an internationally and maybe like super big award-winning author contribute to the anthology, just to be another story? And part of why we want to do it, certainly, there's kind of the financial end. Maybe there could be more copies sold with, broader, because he'll probably, or an author, he or she, would probably promote this book as well. So maybe there'd be more sales for the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers Organization. But in addition to that, I think one of the special things is for our already included authors, they could get broader, exposure, and maybe even on an international level, for their stories to be included with some famous authors' work. So we were kind of chatting about it, and I did try one or two famous authors from Colorado and got some, as expected, answers. And we were chatting, Paul and I were chatting, and he says, well, why don't you just email Paulo Bacigalupi? And I think he said it as a taunt or a dare. I mean, I don't think he really believed that I would do it. And so, of course, I did. And I went to his website and found out clearly that Paulo does not accept any solicitations for anthologies, and don't even bother sending an email kind of stuff on his website. And I thought, well, I'm doing it anyway. So I emailed his, people and told them about the project and how, because he does live in Colorado, he might be more interested in it, and because a lot of his works talk about climate change and the disastrous effects from that, and wouldn't he want to contribute a story for our anthology? And by golly, he said yes, or actually his admin said yes. And so we're going to include one of his stories in the anthology. So we're very pleased to include that. And I think it's going to be great for the other authors and also for Rocky Mountain fiction writers for us to be able to do that.
Can I just comment that I'm so glad I've got Linda for my co-editor, because I thought this was a total moonshot. Why are we even bothering? And lo and behold, look what we did. We landed, a best-selling author. So that's thanks 100% to Linda. So,
well, like I said, team effort, team conversations. So appreciate it.
How long did he take to turn the story around for you? And did you put him through the normal editing paces that you guys had set up, or did you just say, hey, it's Paulo, we'll just take it as is?
No, it's a great question. So what they did offer us was a reprint of a story that was printed a while back that totally closely ties to our theme. And so we were happy to have that. So we won't be doing any of the editing, actually,
Yeah,
that particular story. It's great the way it is. Yeah, so that's what we're going to be including.
that's great. Wow. Um, Very cool. So what else along the way what are some of the surprises or kind of challenges that you had given the submissions? And do you mind mentioning how many total submissions you looked at to arrive at the final 13?
What
Sure.
was it?
I think there was maybe something close to 30 submissions, wasn't it, Paul?
Maybe 35. Seems like a little higher than that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
lot of decision making on your part.
Yeah, and it was tough, and we did it blind, sorry, Paul, that's real, not the right word.
Bit
We
of
removed, sorry, we removed the names, from the submissions, so we weren't focusing on people that were popular with Rocky Mountain fiction writers, or people we knew personally, or people in our critique groups or whatever. So we did make sure that we used a process that eliminated the names, so we wouldn't pick any of our personal favorites. And we did have a couple other judges, and we used a rubric to grade them.
Yeah.
They really closely tied to the concepts you would expect, like character, plot, the beginning, whether it drew you in, the ending, whether it tied closely to the beginning, those kinds of things in the rubric. And that's how we decided on the ones that we selected. And some were exceptional right away. We knew they had to be in it. And some of them were kind of graded highly by some people and not so highly by other people. But then once we reread them a couple times, we went, man, this just really needs to be in here for these reasons. And Paul had some that he absolutely wanted in, and I was not so warm to at first, and it happened vice versa. But once we talked about it, we both understood why the other person. So it's nice to have different personalities involved in the process too. Paul?
I don't really think of that as a challenge. We had to find a consensus between the two of us, and the result is something that I think we're both pleased with. It's actually an exceptional list of stories. But yeah, we definitely had to do some back and forth, and I had to try to convince you on some stories, and you had to try to convince me on some stories. But I expect that kind of conflict, and the result is we have a product that's genuinely a team effort between yourself and myself and our volunteer readers, and that amazing grading rubric that you came up with because of your past experience with judging fiction contests in the past.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is due to be published in time for Colorado Gold at the end of September, correct?
We
Yeah.
we have penciled in a September 7th publication date at this point.
Okay.
Right. And
where are
Colorado Gold is 3 weeks after that.
Right. And where are you in the editing process now? Are you dotting the i's and crossing the t's, or is there still some substantive work to go?
The substantive work is done. We are right in the middle of the copy editing process, and we have a couple of volunteers helping us out. Both Amber Herbert and Rachel Delaney Kraft are volunteering their time to assist us with copy editing. So with 6 months to go, it feels cushy, but I'm sure that it will not feel so cushy when the meat hits the metal. We have formatting to do yet. Everything has to be conglomerated into a big Word file. We need to select fonts yet. We need to get page counts to the cover artist and get the binding width right for the cover art. We have to get the files uploaded on time so that we can order copies on time so that they'll be available for the release party and the conference. We still have a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah. Wow. And I assume it's been a lot of work to this point. I imagine, and I guess I should just straight up ask, has it been more of a challenge than you thought it would be, or was it, did you know what you were getting into when you started?
Sure, I'll talk about that a little bit. As we were talking before you started recording, I am in fact totally blind. So I feel like I can write like anyone else. Borges was blind, right? I can write like anyone else. Maybe I ought to be able to edit like anyone else too. I just have a different set of tools. So one of the biggest challenges for me was finding the tools that I needed to use to do my fair share of the editing work and not really feel like I was using my eyesight as an excuse to get out of doing stuff, right? I wanted to feel like I was carrying my fair share of the load. One thing I found was I've always felt that I've been able to use spreadsheets okay, but lo and behold, Linda can use them much faster than I can. I'm just slow as molasses because of my eyesight. So there was one limitation. And of course, you know, selecting the cover when it comes right down to it, selecting the font. I trust and respect Linda's ability to do a much better job of that than I would if I were depending on the sighted help of anyone else, really. So with Linda on my team, I kind of felt like I could do pretty much anything.
How about you, Linda? Was it more work than you thought it would be?
No.
Yeah.
You know, I think, but you don't know what you don't know, right? And
Yeah.
so people have really helped us all along the way. I think Paul is an incredible communicator, and we do periodically have little phone conference calls, you know, when things look like, I don't know if I want to do this on my own, or and really all of our decisions have been made together. And so I think that's been really helpful. And Paul's editing skills, I think he's kind of minimizing the value of them because he really is incredible at being able to point out what's wrong with something, you know, our line editing phase. Actually, every phase of the editing has been an incredible contributor to that process. So I've really appreciated working with him. And again, the outreach from people from the board of the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers. If we've had questions about contracts or anything like that, really people have just been super in helping us. And the volunteers that we have that are helping us out in all of these phases as well has just been incredible. Really, really appreciate it. Can't complain at all. You know, I think what the deal is that this is an important piece of what Rocky Mountain Fiction Writer does. And I think that people realize that it needs to be high quality and it needs to come out on time and, you know, meet the schedules and all that kind of stuff. And even the authors, you know, we deserve to give them the best possible product as possible, the contributing authors. And so I think all of that makes us happy or pleased to do whatever work is necessary to get out a good product.
That's great. Would each of you care to kind of highlight a couple of your favorite stories and just maybe say a couple words about one or two or three?
Go ahead, Linda.
Oh, Paul, I thought you were going to go first. Sure. I guess there's two of them that I'll mention. One is about this really, really talented author that's having a little bit of a writer's block, and he uses his location, and he gets into some really tough circumstances. And he uses his location and his wits to get out of this very challenging situation that he's in. And one of the reasons that I like it is because it didn't just take climate change and say, you know, here's some daunting climate change situations, and here's what's happening about it. It kind of used climate change as a backstory, because the only reason he's in the location that he's in is because of climate change. And actually, Mark, you were the author for that particular story, so I'm not going to.
I thought it sounded familiar. I was kind of, yeah, it sounded kind of familiar.
Yeah, but at any rate, that's definitely one of my favorite stories. The other
Thank
one
you.
is, and sorry if I stole that from you, Paul, but that's what you get for not going first. The other one is there's a story that involves a married couple, and the married couple are both women, okay? And it's a great story irrespective of that. But one of the reasons I really appreciated that is I was pleased to see a submission like that included in the anthology, because I believe it contributes to the demand there is for more inclusive and representative storytelling. So I was very pleased that someone contributed a story that included those elements.
And what story was that?
That's called Ithis, and it was written by Laurel McCarg.
Well, you did steal the Mark Stevens story, which I was going to mention as one of my favorites. And I'll say right off the bat, it's not because I'm trying to butter you up, Mark. It's RMFW has so many opportunities for its members to get involved in projects like these and learn. And so when I stepped forward to be co-editor, I don't know anything about putting together an anthology. Well, very little, really. And I knew it was going to be a learning experience for me. And what I hoped was that by reading stories that people submitted, that I would become a better writer as a result. And I saw you do some pretty amazing things in the Cistern that really kind of have helped me think about story writing in a new way. So even though Linda's already plugged that one, I'm going to plug The Cistern by Mark Stevens. There was another story, Rachel's story, Beyond Carbon, where a company develops a carbon capture technology that ends up kind of opening well, no spoilers in this podcast. I won't tell you what happens, but you got to read that because it's very imaginative. And if I had to pick another one, I would say there's a horror romance in which a couple is headed for Leadville as kind of humanity's last refuge, and things kind of don't turn out the way that the couple expects it to. And I'll just leave it at that. But they were,
That's great.
all the stories were great. And the more we read them, the more we found something to appreciate about every one of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
All the authors really took the theme and didn't just kind of give us what you'd expect. You'd expect big business, bad big business, people with climate change issues, that kind of a thing, people running from fires, blah, blah, blah. And those are good stories as well. But what the authors did is they took the theme and they made it their own. And they created a scenario or a great character development where climate change was an element, but it wasn't necessarily the whole crux of the story. So I really applaud the authors for taking this theme and really making it their own and creating stories that are imaginative out of that.
Wow. Can't wait to read those. Paul, did you mention the name of the title of the horror romance Leadville one? Did you mention that, or can you?
I didn't. That one is called Stokes the Happy, and it's by Sepa Onion, which is the pen name of Susan Schoolman.
Gotcha. Thank you. I'm wondering if you have sequenced the book yet. Have you put them in order that you're going to run them, and how did you decide on that?
The order we read the titles is the order we're currently planning to present them. And it's been a struggle. There's been a lot of back and forth to get a sequence of stories that, we've got a good mix there. There's science fiction, general fiction, romance, horror, thriller, and we don't want to lump similar stories together. We want to open with something that's really going to catch the reader's attention, and we want to go out with a bang, and finding that order that balances all of those criteria, it's really an over-constrained problem. But I think we've got something that we're happy with right now, and I don't think it's likely to change at this point. How do you feel, Linda?
No, I agree. I think it's pretty close. Maybe it's final even at this point too. Yeah. And even length of stories really kind of weighed into what we were looking at too. We didn't want to put all of the longer stories. I think we had a 6,000 word limit or something like that, but we have a wide range of lengths of stories and we didn't want to kind of lump all of those together too. So a lot of different elements went into that decision.
Wow. You guys have both touched on some of the things you've learned along the way, and I sense and I can feel the satisfaction coming through and all that. Is there any other rewarding aspects to this you might want to touch on, and particularly thinking about how each of you might think about writing or think about story ideas, or just, being involved in this so many different stories that you're just kind of rifling through, studying, deciding upon, might have sort of in a good way possibly create a little spark or a different way of thinking about your own creativity.
Should I go first?
Sure.
Wow. the most rewarding aspect of this anthology for me has been being part of a project from its very conception all the way through to, we're not quite there yet, but it's coming soon, a tangible book you can hold in your hands, right? A final product. And not only, you know, the big thing is being part of a team, knowing that we're building something that I could never do on my own. I can only do it with the help of Linda and with the help of Amber and Rachel and Natasha and Pamela Golden-Prohorov, everyone who's helped out on our anthology team, and all of the other RMFW people that have helped out along the way, Susan Brooks and ZJ Zuper and Kelly Lindberg. So and then, you know, just kind of to put a dot on the end of that very, very long run-on sentence, I would have to say that I feel that in order to develop as a writer, you really need to see a project like this from an editor's perspective. It's difficult to name a specific insight that I've gained, but I know that this is going to stew inside my brain and mix together with all the herbs and other ingredients. And the next time I go to write a short story, I'll be better for it.
How about you, Linda?
Yeah, and all of the things that Paul has said, you know, I really agree with him on all of the points he made. And maybe in addition, I think it also teaches me skills of how I need to respond if I'm put in the kind of the same situation as a contributing author. You know, things that we appreciate as editors are things that maybe as a contributing author in a future anthology, I would want to do those sorts of things as well, you know, like accepting feedback graciously and really trying to meet timely guidelines and milestones and stuff like that. And so those are the things that I think really make me think, how can I do this better for someone else if I'm not in charge of it? And so I think it's taught me a lot about that. The other thing is just reading the incredible stories. I think that anytime you review, whether it's in a critique group or being an editor or even just being a judge of stories, you really learn about how you can improve your own writing as well, because you notice things that are remarkable about other people's writing. And that's got to help you with your own processes as well.
Very good. Thank you. Those are really interesting answers. So from this point going forward, do you have all the help you need? If anybody wanted to reach out, is there things that they could do that you would still welcome the support?
I'm working closely with Natasha Christensen, Tasha Watts, who's has a lot of experience with promotion. She did a workshop at the last conference on how to do podcasts. So I'm working with her to try to find out how we can disseminate the word, get the word out on this anthology as wide and as far as possible. And I'm going to be working on that over the summer as the publication date approaches and probably into the fall. We have people helping us right now with copy editing. That's Amber and Rachel, Amber Herbert and Rachel Kraft. As we get closer to formatting and production, do you have people that are helping you out with that aspect of things, Linda?
So far, and if we run into some roadblocks, we have a couple of people who have offered to help as well. That being said, you know, if someone would love to come in and help format the whole thing for us, you know, for free, we would love to hear from those individuals, absolutely, and would be gracious, you know, graciously honored to have their help. But for the most part, we don't. You know, at this point, I think what we really are hoping is that someone's watching these podcasts, seeing how the project can unfold, and thinking about doing it 2 years from now. You know, hopefully we're influencing people that are out there that are wanting to learn about how to do this kind of a process and enjoy a great experience like what we've had, and that those people will come forward.
You read my mind, Linda.
Yeah. Are you keeping like a little journal or notebook, like here's a schedule that we did this month, or you know, something that passes along like a handbook almost to say here's how you do it?
I don't think we're doing it quite that formally, no, but we have an enormous shared directory on Google Drive that's got everything we've put together and noted along the way. And when it comes time to turn the reins over to the next pair of co-editors, we will have all of that information that we can share with them and to help us jog our memory about what went right and what went wrong.
Yep.
Right. We had that same kind of help from previous editors of other anthologies as well. And they were always available on the phone or even to have a conference call with us if we had some challenges or we didn't know how to start something. So we'd be available.
And, and I'll add that one thing I think helped both Linda and I hit the ground running on this project is Linda had a story in the Bazaar anthology, and I had a story in Wild Uncivilized Tales. So we both went through the anthology experience, and we know what the schedule was like for the anthologies that we previously participated in. And that's really helped us out a lot.
It
Yep.
has.
I think it was a great move going to the 2-year cycle because that just allows this to breathe. And
yes.
Oh man.
I almost feel I can get some of my own writing done.
Yeah. Good
And
deal.
Linda shaking her head saying no.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to both of you. Congratulations to both of you for bringing this very close to the finish line. I know it probably doesn't feel like that to you, but you're getting there. And thank you for sharing the details of your cover, the title, and your contributors to the podcast. We really appreciate it. As we wrap up, of course, there's still time, and we want to always get recommendations for a book or an author just to pass it along, pay it forward a little bit, maybe start with Linda and hear what you're digging.
Sure. And actually it's a book that I would recommend because I think people will be prepared then to read the anthology. And that is The Wind-Up Girl by Paulo Coelho. He published that in 2009. That particular book was a debut novel, and he won both the Nebula and the Hugo Awards in Sci-Fi for that. So an incredible debut novel. And just a little basic information about it. It's set in 23rd century Thailand, and it deals with the characters and the descriptions are just amazing. It takes place in Thailand at that time, but one of the lead characters is a genetically engineered individual that is part human and part robot. And she has a lot of challenges ahead of her. And then also bureaucracy people that are dealing with how to feed the planet when it's been devastated by climate change. And you really can't grow much of anything, and what the government is doing and not doing well on how to control the people and how to control what kind of food that they get for the planet. So it's an amazing story.
Excellent.
I want to recommend a couple things. One is a dated book at this point, 2012 debut novel by Karen Thompson Walker called The Age of Miracles, which is a coming-of-age story for the young female protagonist set against a backdrop where the Earth's rotation is slowing with no explanation. And so this protagonist is entering adulthood at a time when the world around her is literally becoming this strange foreign place.
Ooh.
It's
Wow.
a very well-written book, and I haven't really followed the author, and I want to see what they've written since then. And then if I can just throw something else out, the reason I gave you a dated book is I haven't been reading as many novels as I would like to. And the reason is because I've actually been listening to a lot of short fiction podcasts. So two that I want to plug is Uncanny Magazine podcast, which is great, groundbreaking, award-winning science fiction. And then Beneath Ceaseless Skies, which is just a wonderful award-winning podcast of fantasy fiction. So both of those are outstanding listens.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Paul and Linda, thank you so much for your time today and for this thorough rundown, and good luck from here to September 7th.
Thanks,
Thank-
Mark.
Appreciate it.
Woo.